A billionaire invited his ex to his wedding. His intention was to make her suffer and feel jealous. But she arrived with her triplets. What happened next left everyone in shock. Before hearing this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The aroma of premium imported Colombian coffee was no longer as intense in the porcelain cup on the mahogany desk. Michael Turner, 35 years old, observed the city of New York through the enormous windows of his office on the top floor of one of the most imposing skyscrapers on Wall Street. The reflection in the glass showed an elegant man, dressed in a tailored Italian suit, perfectly styled hair, and a watch that cost more than many apartments. His fingers drummed on a cream-colored envelope with gold trim. It was the last invitation to his wedding that needed to be sent, and precisely the one that weighed heaviest in his hands. The name of the recipient, Helen Mitchell, was written in elaborate calligraphy, an artisanal work that had cost a small fortune for each of the 500 invitations. "Mr. Turner, your fiancée is on line 2, his secretary's voice sounded through the intercom. Michael sighed, adjusting his posture before answering. "Hi, honey," Chloe's melodious voice filled his ears. "Have you sent all the invitations?" "Almost all," he replied, his eyes once again fixed on the envelope in his hands. "What do you mean, almost?" "Michael, the party is in 3 weeks. The confirmed guests need to be reported to the caterer by tomorrow." Michael ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture that only happened when he was truly restless. "There's just one invitation left, Chloe. It will be sent today." "It's for her, isn't it?" Chloe's voice changed subtly. "For your ex?" "Yes," he answered simply. There was no need to lie. Chloe knew about Helen, knew the story, or at least the version he himself believed to be true. "Are you sure you want to do this? After 6 years without contact, I want her to see Chloe. I need her to know that I made the right choice." The silence on the other end of the line was broken, only by the soft sound of his fiancée's breathing. "All right, honey. Do what you think is best. I need to hang up. I have a meeting with the decorator in 10 minutes. I love you." "I love you too," he replied automatically, hanging up the phone. Michael stood up, walking to the window. Down below, New York pulsed in its usual frantic rhythm. 6 years had passed since he made the choice that changed his life. At the time, he was just another programmer, sharing a tiny apartment with 2 friends and dreaming of creating something revolutionary. Helen was a medical student, brilliant and determined. The love between them was the kind that made people around them sigh with envy. But then came the ultimatum. "Either your codes or me," she had said, tired of the sleepless nights, lost weekends, broken promises. And he chose the codes. He chose his obsession with creating something grand, with proving his worth. Today, he was the CEO of the country's largest technology company, about to expand into the international market. Taking the envelope, Michael handed it personally to his secretary. "Send it by courier. I want confirmation of delivery." Returning to his office, he picked up the cup of cold coffee and poured its contents into the sink of the private bathroom. His reflection in the mirror showed an accomplished, successful, envied man. So why did he feel that inexplicable emptiness in his chest? Why, after so long, did he still think about how it would be if he had made a different choice? The sound of a notification on his cell phone brought him back to reality. It was a message from his secretary. "Invitation successfully delivered to Dr. Helen Mitchell's office." Michael smiled, satisfied. In 3 weeks, Helen would see everything he had achieved. She would see that he had made the right choice by prioritizing his career. What he didn't know was that fate had prepared a surprise that would completely change his perspective on what really mattered in life. As the sun began to set over the city, casting golden reflections on the windows of the buildings, Michael turned his attention to the financial reports on his desk. Numbers, graphs, and projections. His world was now made of these. A world he had built choice after choice, sacrifice after sacrifice. A world that was about to be completely shaken by a secret kept for 6 years. The medical office in the Upper East Side was a perfect reflection of its owner. Elegant without being ostentatious, welcoming without losing seriousness. Helen Mitchell, 34 years old, adjusted the stethoscope around her neck while finalizing the notes on her last patient. The late afternoon brought that typical golden light of New York, making her office seem even cozier. "Doctor," Marina, her secretary, carefully opened the door. "A correspondence arrived for you. It seems important." Helen raised her eyes from the medical records, finding in Marina's hands a cream-colored envelope with gold details. Her heart immediately accelerated upon recognizing the sender's name, Michael Turner. 6 years had passed, but that name still had the power to completely destabilize her. "Thank you, Marina." Her voice came out hoarser than normal. "You can go home. We're done for today." Alone, Helen turned the envelope between her fingers several times before finally opening it. The wedding invitation was exactly like Michael, luxurious, imposing, meticulously planned. The date was set for 3 weeks from now at one of the most exclusive event venues in the city. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her phone, dialing a number she knew by heart. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. "I was about to call you. How was your day?" Beatrice, her best friend since college days, asked animatedly. "He's getting married, Bea," Helen replied, her voice a mix of emotions she couldn't even decipher herself. The silence on the other end of the line was momentary. "Michael?" "Yes, I just received the invitation." "He's got nerve," Beatrice huffed. "After everything—" "Wait, does he know?" Helen closed her eyes, remembering the noise coming from the waiting room, where her 3 children were playing under the care of Mrs. Cecilia, the nanny. "No." "Helen, I know, Bea, I know I should have told him, but when I found out I was pregnant, he had already left. He was starting his company, realizing his dreams. And you know how difficult it was at the beginning, how the doctors said a triplet pregnancy was risky, how I needed absolute bed rest. And now, what are you going to do?" Helen stood up, walking to her office window. On the other side of the glass, she could see the playground where she often took Peter, Luke, and Michael Jr. to play. Her boys, now 5 years old, were the joy of her life, and they were also the exact copy of their father, from the intense green eyes to the charming smile that melted hearts. "I'm going to the wedding," she declared, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "What? Helen, have you lost your mind?" "He has the right to know, Bea. And the boys, they've started asking questions about their father. I can't put this off any longer. And you're just going to show up at his wedding with 3 miniatures of him. This is going to be a scandal." Helen smiled sadly. "Maybe it's time to face the truth. We all deserve that." The sound of children's laughter invaded her office, making her heart tighten. Her children were her strength, her reason for living. During the difficult pregnancy, it was they who kept her strong. When they were born premature, it was the love for them that made her overcome every obstacle. And now, it was they who gave her courage to face the past. Dr. Mitchell, Mrs. Cecilia, knocked softly on the door. "The boys are asking if they can come in now." "Bea, I need to hang up," Helen whispered into the phone. "I'll call you later." Putting the invitation in the drawer, Helen took a deep breath and opened a smile. "You can come in, my loves." The 3 children entered like a hurricane of energy and joy. Peter, the oldest by 2 minutes, was already carrying his toy stethoscope. Luke, the middle one, was holding a storybook, and Michael Jr., the youngest, ran straight to his mother's lap. "Mommy, tell that story again?" Michael Jr. asked, his green eyes shining with expectation. "Which story, sweetheart?" "The one about how you met Daddy." Helen felt her heart skip a beat. She looked at her 3 little treasures, so innocent, so full of curiosity about their origins. In 3 weeks, their lives would change forever. She just hoped she had enough strength to face the consequences of her choices. "Not today, my love," she answered softly, hugging her son. "But I promise that soon you'll hear an even more special story. I've reached the maximum output limit. Please let me know when you'd like me to continue with the translation." 3 days before the wedding, the most prestigious event hall in New York was buzzing with final preparations. Chloe personally supervised every detail, from the arrangement of flowers imported from Holland to the organization of French crystal tables. Her wedding dress, an exclusive creation by an Italian designer, was kept in a special room waiting for the big moment. "Michael, you need to approve the final dinner menu," she called to her fiancé, who was distracted by his cell phone. Since he had sent that last invitation 3 weeks ago, he seemed constantly absent. "I trust your judgment, honey," he responded automatically, his eyes still fixed on the device's screen. Chloe sighed, approaching him. "You've been like this since you sent the invitation to her, haven't you?" Michael finally put away his phone, facing his fiancée. Chloe was stunning, with her long blonde hair and blue eyes. She was intelligent, dedicated, and shared his ambitious vision of life. She was the perfect choice. So why did he feel that restlessness? "I didn't receive confirmation of her attendance," he admitted. "I thought she would respond, even if it was to refuse." "And that bothers you so much?" Chloe asked, her voice betraying a hint of insecurity. Before Michael could respond, they were interrupted by Vera Sanders, his former mentor and current financial director of the company, a 60-year-old woman who had guided his career from the beginning. "Michael, we need to review some contracts before the wedding," Vera announced, her authoritative presence filling the environment. "Not now, Vera," Chloe protested. "We're in the middle of preparations." "These are important contracts for international expansion," Vera insisted, casting a meaningful look at Michael. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Helen was organizing the last details for her own mission. She had ordered identical suits for the 3 boys, in a navy blue tone that further enhanced their resemblance to their father. "Mom, why do we have to wear the same clothes?" Peter asked as he tried on the suit. "Because you're triplets, my love, and you're going to a very special party," Helen replied, adjusting her son's bow tie. "Will there be other daddies at this party?" Luke innocently questioned, making Helen's heart tighten. "Why that question, son?" "Because John from school has 2 daddies. And we don't have any," Michael Jr. completed, his serious expression identical to the one Michael made when he was concentrating. Helen sat on the bed, gathering the 3 children around her. "You know, sometimes families are different from each other. Some have a daddy and mommy, others just daddy. But why have we never met our daddy?" Peter insisted. At that moment, Helen's cell phone rang. It was Beatrice again. "Have you really decided to do this?" her friend asked without beating around the bush. "I have no choice, Bea. The boys are asking more and more questions, and after receiving that invitation, it's as if it were a sign. And if he reacts badly, if he wants to take the boys away from you?" Helen watched her children playing with their bow ties. Michael was many things, but he was never cruel. He deserves to know he's a father, and the boys deserve to know him. On the other side of the city, Michael finally managed a moment alone in his office. He opened his desk drawer and took out an old photo, yellowed by time. In it, he and Helen smiled, embracing in front of the medical school. They were young, in love, and full of dreams. The intercom buzzed, bringing him back to reality. "Mr. Turner, your fiancée is here with the final list of confirmed guests." Michael quickly put the photo away. "You can send her in." Chloe entered, carrying an elegant folder. 498 confirmations, she announced. Only 2 guests didn't respond. "Who?" Michael asked, although he already knew one of the answers. "Your cousin from Boston and Helen Mitchell." The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of a notification on Michael's phone. It was an email from the event organization. "Confirmation of attendance, Helen Mitchell. +4 guests." Michael frowned. "+4? Who could she bring?" What he didn't know was that in 3 days, his life would change completely, and that the true meaning of that number, 4 guests, would be the revelation that would shake all the foundations of his carefully planned existence. The eve of the wedding arrived with an almost palpable energy in the air. The New York sky, normally gray at this time of year, presented an intense blue, as if even the weather conspired for the big day. In the penthouse apartment he shared with Chloe, Michael adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. The Italian tuxedo fit perfectly on his athletic body, the result of hours dedicated to the gym between meetings and business trips. Still, his hands trembled slightly as he tied the knot. "Nervous?" Chloe asked, appearing behind him. Even in a robe and with her hair tied back, she exuded a natural elegance. "Just anxious," Michael replied, turning to her. "Tomorrow is the big day." Chloe smiled, but her eyes betrayed a shadow of concern. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey." "Why was it so important for you to invite Helen? After so many years?" Michael hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think I needed closure. To show her and maybe myself that I made the right choice back then." Chloe nodded slowly. "And if she shows up tomorrow? Then we'll have the chance to close this chapter once and for all," he replied, softly kissing her forehead. On the other side of the city, in Helen's apartment, the atmosphere was one of controlled agitation. Mrs. Cecilia ran from one side to the other, trying to keep the triplets clean and tidy while Helen finalized the preparations. "Mom, why do we have to sleep early today?" Peter questioned, resisting the idea of going to bed earlier than usual. "Because tomorrow we have a very important day, my love," Helen replied, adjusting her son's pajamas. "Is it the special party?" Luke asked, his eyes shining with expectation. "Yes, it's the special party," she confirmed, feeling a lump form in her throat. Michael Jr., always the most observant of the three, noticed his mother's tension. "Mom, are you sad?" Helen pulled the three into a tight hug. "No, my love, Mommy is just thinking about how grown up you are. You know that I love you more than anything in this world, don't you?" "More than chocolate?" Peter asked seriously. "Much more than chocolate," she laughed, feeling tears form in the corners of her eyes. After finally putting the boys to bed, Helen allowed herself a moment of reflection. She took an old box from her closet, opening it carefully. Inside were kept memories of her relationship with Michael, movie tickets, birthday cards, and a small velvet box. With trembling hands, she opened the small box, revealing a delicate engagement ring. Michael had given her that ring 6 years ago, promising a future together. A week later, she discovered the pregnancy, and before she could share the news, he had already left, pursuing his dreams of business success. The sound of her cell phone pulled her from her thoughts. It was Beatrice. "Just wanted to know if everything's okay," her friend said, her voice laden with concern. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you tomorrow?" "Thank you, Bea, but I need to do this alone," Helen replied, her voice firmer than she felt. "Well, not exactly alone. I have my 3 little warriors with me." "Helen," Beatrice hesitated, "have you thought about what will happen afterwards? What if Michael wants to be part of the boys' lives? What if he gets furious that you hid this from him for so long?" Helen sighed, looking at the photo of the triplets on her bedside table. "Honestly, Bea, I have no idea. I just know that I can't put this off any longer. The boys deserve to know the truth, and Michael, well, he has the right to know he's a father." After hanging up, Helen turned her attention to the dress hanging on the closet door. It was an elegant model in a deep blue tone, carefully chosen to complement the boys' suits. Tomorrow she would face her past and possibly change the course of her future. Meanwhile, in Michael's company office, Vera Sanders worked late as usual. But that night, her attention was focused on a specific folder, kept under lock and key in her personal safe. Inside the folder were dozens of printed emails, all from Helen to Michael, dated 6 years ago. Emails that Michael never got to read, intercepted and hidden by Vera to protect the future of the company and her protégé. Vera picked up the phone, dialing a familiar number. "Is everything prepared for tomorrow?" she asked as soon as they answered. "Good. We can't allow any unpleasant surprises at the wedding of the year." What Vera didn't know was that fate had its own plans, and that no amount of preparation could prevent the storm that was about to form on the horizon. The dawn brought with it a mixture of expectation and nervousness that hung over the city like an invisible mist. In the luxurious hotel where Michael and Chloe had spent the night, preparations began early. While the bride was surrounded by a team of makeup artists and hairdressers, Michael found himself alone in his suite, facing his reflection in the mirror. "It's today," he murmured to himself, adjusting his tie for the umpteenth time. His gaze fell on the cell phone on the bedside table. No message from Helen. No sign that she would actually attend. Why did this bother him so much? On the other side of the city, in Helen's apartment, organized chaos took over the environment. Mrs. Cecilia ran from one room to another, trying to keep the triplets clean and tidy while Helen finalized her own preparation. "Mom, this tie is suffocating me," Luke complained, pulling at the bow around his neck. Helen knelt in front of her son, lovingly adjusting the accessory. "It's just for today, my love. I promise you can take them off afterwards." "Why do we have to wear the same clothes?" Peter questioned, looking at himself critically in the mirror. "Because you're special," Helen replied, feeling a lump form in her throat. "And today is a very important day." Michael Jr., always the most perceptive of the three, approached his mother. "Mom, are you crying?" Helen quickly wiped away a stubborn tear that had escaped. "No, my love. Mommy is just emotional seeing you all so handsome." Meanwhile, at the event hall, the final preparations were being finished. Fresh flowers were strategically arranged, creating a fairy tale scenario. The catering team ran from one side to the other, ensuring that everything was perfect for the 500 expected guests. Vera Sanders personally supervised the guest list at the entrance. Her watchful eyes scanned each name, each face. She knew that Helen had confirmed her attendance, and she was determined to prevent any situation that could compromise Michael's big day. As guests began to arrive, the buzz of expectation grew. Celebrities, businessmen, and politicians mingled, all eager to witness the union of the year. At the church, Michael waited anxiously, his eyes constantly drifting to the entrance. Each time the doors opened, his heart accelerated, only to decelerate again when he realized it wasn't who he was unconsciously expecting to see. "Is everything okay?" asked his best man, noticing his friend's restlessness. Yes, Michael responded automatically, forcing a smile. "Just anxious." Outside, an elegant car parked. Helen took a deep breath, looking at the three boys in the back seat through the rearview mirror. "Remember what we talked about, my loves. Behave and always stay close to Mummy, okay?" The three nodded solemnly, their serious expressions almost comical on their little faces. As they approached the entrance, Helen felt her heart accelerate. Vera Sanders was there, checking the invitations. For a moment, their gazes crossed, and Helen could swear she saw a flash of recognition and fear in the older woman's eyes. "Name, please," Vera asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Helen Mitchell, and 3 guests," she replied, indicating the boys. Vera hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning the children's faces. The resemblance was undeniable. I'm sorry, but children are not allowed at the ceremony." "That wasn't specified in the invitation," Helen argued, feeling the tension grow. At that moment, one of the event organizers approached. "Any problem here?" "None," Vera quickly replied. "Mrs. Mitchell and her guests can enter." As Helen and the triplets were led to their seats in the church, Vera quickly took out her cell phone, typing a frantic message. Inside the church, the music began to play, announcing the bride's entrance. All eyes turned to Chloe, stunning in her white dress. All except Michael's, whose eyes had just found a familiar face in the crowd. Helen was there, more beautiful than he remembered. And beside her, 3 identical boys with green eyes he knew very well. Eyes just like his own. The world seemed to stop for an instant. The music, the guests, even Chloe walking towards him, everything disappeared. At that moment, Michael knew that his life was about to change forever. And then, as if awakening from a trance, he heard the priest's voice. "Michael Turner, do you take Chloe Richardson as your lawful wedded wife?" The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. "I've reached the character limit. Would you like me to continue?" The silence in the church was deafening. Hundreds of expectant gazes turned to Michael, who remained motionless, his eyes fixed on a distant point in the crowd. Chloe, still holding the bouquet of white roses, felt her heart race at her fiancé's hesitation. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling, breaking the silence. As if awakening from a trance, Michael blinked rapidly, turning his attention to the bride in front of him. His eyes, however, continued to oscillate between Chloe and the spot where Helen was sitting with the 3 children. He began, his voice failing. "I need a moment." A murmur of surprise ran through the church. Michael, ignoring the shocked looks, descended from the altar and walked purposefully towards Helen. Chloe, stunned, remained motionless, watching the scene unfold. Helen felt her heart race as she saw Michael approach. The triplets, sensing the tension, instinctively clung to their mother's legs. "Helen?" Michael spoke, his voice a mixture of emotions. "Who are these boys?" Before Helen could answer, Peter, the bravest of the three, took a step forward. "I'm Peter, this is Luke, and that's Michael. We're brothers." Michael felt his legs weaken. The name, the green eyes, the features so familiar. There was no doubt. They're mine?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Helen, with tears in her eyes, nodded. "Yes, Michael, they're your sons." The buzz in the church increased. Chloe, recovering from the initial shock, descended from the altar and approached the group, her face a mask of confusion and pain. "Michael, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. At that moment, Vera Sanders appeared, trying to control the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you remain calm. We're going to take a brief break in the ceremony." But it was too late. The news spread like wildfire among the guests. The great businessman Michael Turner, about to get married, discovering he was the father of triplets at the altar. Michael, still stunned, looked from Helen to the children, trying to process the information. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally managed to ask. Helen took a deep breath, gathering courage. "When I found out I was pregnant, you had already left. You were starting your company, realizing your dreams. I tried to contact you, Michael, dozens of emails, calls. I never received anything," Michael interrupted, frowning. It was then that Vera, pale and visibly shaken, stepped forward. "Michael, I need to confess something." All eyes turned to the older woman. Vera, trembling, continued, "I intercepted all of Helen's attempts to contact you. I thought it would be better for you, for the company." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Chloe dropping her bouquet. "So, that's it?" she asked, her voice laden with hurt. "All this time?" Michael, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, looked at the three boys who were staring at him with curiosity. His sons whom he didn't know, whom he hadn't seen grow up. "I'm sorry," he murmured, not knowing exactly to whom he was apologizing, whether to Chloe, to Helen, to the children, or to himself. Chloe, gathering all her dignity, took the ring off her finger and handed it to Michael. "I guess there won't be a wedding today," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. And with that, she turned and walked out of the church, leaving a trail of whispers and shocked looks behind. Michael, still dazed, turned to Helen and the children. I don't know what to say." Helen, with tears in her eyes, held the hand of each of the boys. "Maybe we can start with a proper introduction." At that moment, while chaos reigned around him, Michael knelt down to be at eye level with the triplets. Looking into the eyes that were reflections of his own, he felt an emotion he had never experienced before. "Hello," he said, his voice choked. "I'm Michael, and I'm your father." The children, still uncertain, looked at Helen for confirmation. With a gentle nod, she encouraged them to approach. And so, in the middle of a crowded church with shocked guests, an abandoned bride, and a years-long lie finally revealed, a new family began to form. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: nothing would be the same again. In the weeks that followed the fateful wedding day, New York seemed to vibrate with rumors and speculation about the scandal involving Michael Turner. Gossip newspapers and magazines talked about nothing else, and social media was in an uproar with theories and opinions about what had happened. Michael took refuge in his penthouse, avoiding contact with the press and even with his closest associates. The only exceptions were the scheduled visits to get to know his newly discovered children better. On a Sunday afternoon, Helen's apartment was full of nervous but hopeful energy. Michael arrived punctually at 2 p.m., carrying 3 colorful packages. "Hi," he greeted Helen timidly at the door. "I brought some gifts for the boys. I hope you don't mind." Helen smiled softly. "Of course not, they're eager to see you." As he entered the living room, Michael was greeted by 3 pairs of green eyes identical to his own. Peter, Luke, and Michael Jr. were sitting on the couch, dressed in casual clothes but visibly groomed for the occasion. "Hello, boys," Michael said, sitting in an armchair facing them. "How are you?" "Good," Peter replied, the most outgoing of the three. "Did you bring presents?" Helen made a motion to reprimand her son, but Michael laughed, relaxing a bit. "Yes, I did. But first, how about we talk a little?" For the next 2 hours, Michael found himself immersed in a completely new world. He heard about each of the boys' likes. Peter loved dinosaurs and dreamed of becoming a paleontologist. Luke was passionate about books and was already reading, above his grade level. Michael Jr., in turn, demonstrated a precocious talent for numbers and puzzles. "He takes after you," Helen commented softly, watching Michael Jr. easily solve a Rubik's Cube. Michael felt a lump in his throat. "Helen, I'm sorry. For everything." She shook her head. "It wasn't your fault, Michael. Neither of us could have predicted what Vera would do." The mention of Vera's name brought a shadow to Michael's face. After the revelation in the church, he had immediately fired his former mentor and initiated legal proceedings against her for interference and concealment of information. "How are things at the company?" Helen asked, noticing the change in his expression. Michael sighed. "Chaotic. The board is pressuring for a public statement. The shareholders are nervous. And Chloe." He stopped, remembering the pain in his ex-fiancée's eyes when she returned the ring. Chloe had left for abroad, soon after the incident, avoiding any contact. "It will take time," Helen said softly, "for all of us." Meanwhile, the boys had opened their presents: dinosaur excavation kits for Peter, a collection of classic books for Luke, and an advanced set of puzzles for Michael Jr. Watching the children play animatedly with their new toys, Michael felt a mixture of joy and regret. He had missed so many moments, so many firsts. "They're amazing," he murmured to Helen. "You did an incredible job raising them alone." Helen smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you. It wasn't easy, but they are my life." As the afternoon progressed, Michael found himself increasingly enchanted with his sons. Each laugh, each curious question, each look of admiration made him realize how much he had missed and how much he still had to gain. When it was time to leave, Michael knelt in front of the triplets. "Can I come visit you again?" "Yes," the three answered in unison, their faces lit up with identical smiles. At the door, Michael hesitated before leaving. "Helen, I know we have a lot to resolve, a lot to talk about, but I want you to know that I'm committed to being part of their lives, really." Helen nodded, a small smile on her lips. "It's all I've ever wanted, Michael." As he drove back home, Michael felt a determination he hadn't experienced in years. He knew the challenges ahead were immense: regaining the trust of his shareholders, dealing with the press, reorganizing his personal life. But for the first time in a long time, he felt he was on the right path. That night in his silent apartment, Michael took out his laptop and began to type. It wasn't a financial report or a business strategy. It was an open letter to his children, to Helen, to the public. It was time to tell his version of the story and, more importantly, to assume his new role, that of a father. As the words flowed, Michael realized he was at the beginning of a new journey, a journey that promised to be the most challenging and rewarding of his life. The following months brought a series of changes in Michael Turner's life. The open letter he had published, detailing his version of events and expressing his commitment to his newly discovered children, had caused a mixed reaction. While some criticized him for his absence in the early years of the children's lives, others praised his honesty and determination to take responsibility. At the company, Michael faced daily challenges. The scandal had shaken the confidence of some investors, and he spent hours in meetings trying to stabilize the situation. However, something had changed in his approach. Where before he saw only numbers and strategies, now he considered the human impact of his decisions. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Michael parked his car in front of Central Park. It was his day to visit the triplets, and he had planned a picnic. Helen was already waiting for him with the children near the lake. "Daddy!" the boys shouted in unison as they saw him approach. It was still strange to hear that word directed at him. but increasingly he felt warmed by it. "Hi, champions," Michael responded, hugging each of them. "Ready for our day in the park?" While the children ran off to play, Michael and Helen spread out the picnic blanket under a large tree. The air between them, once tense and charged with unspoken hurt, now seemed lighter. "How are things at the company?" Helen asked, pouring juice for the boys who were returning breathless from their games. Michael sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Complicated, but we're recovering. Actually, I'm thinking of making some changes." Helen raised an eyebrow, curious. "What kind of changes?" "I want to create a foundation," he explained, his eyes shining with enthusiasm, "to help single parents, offer legal support, daycare. I think it's time to use my resources for something truly meaningful." Helen observed him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. This wasn't the same Michael she had known years ago, obsessed only with success and money. "That's amazing, Michael. Actually," he continued, hesitant, "I'd like your help with this. Your experience as a single mother would be invaluable." Before Helen could respond, they were interrupted by Luke, who approached with a book in his hands. "Dad, can you read this story to us?" Michael smiled, taking the book. "Of course, champion, come here, all of you." As Michael read the story, making different voices for each character and eliciting laughter from the children, Helen watched him with a thoughtful look. It was evident the effort he was making to connect with his children to make up for lost time. Later, while the children played on the nearby playground, Michael and Helen continued their conversation. "You know," Michael began, his voice low and reflective, "in these last few months I've been thinking a lot about what really matters in life. I spent so much time chasing success, money, recognition, and in the end, what really matters was right here." Helen nodded, understanding. "It's a lesson many of us take time to learn." "Helen," Michael turned to face her, his gaze intense, "I know we made a lot of mistakes in the past, that there's a lot of water under the bridge, but do you think we could try again? Not immediately, of course, but maybe, with time, we could rebuild something for the boys and for us?" Helen felt her heart race. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was happening, she felt hesitant. "Michael, At that moment, they were interrupted by the excited shouts of the triplets, who were running towards them. "Mom, Dad, look what we found!" The children crowded around them, proudly showing a colorful feather they had found. The moment of tension dissipated, replaced by the contagious joy of the boys. As she helped Peter carefully store the feather in a small bag, Helen glanced at Michael. "Let's take it slow, okay? One step at a time." Michael nodded, a soft smile on his lips. "One step at a time," he agreed. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, painting the New York sky with shades of orange and pink. As the small family gathered their belongings to leave, Michael found himself filled with a sensation he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. The path ahead was still uncertain, full of challenges and obstacles to be overcome. But looking at Helen and the three boys who were now part of his life, Michael knew that, for the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he should be. As they walked together out of the park, Michael realized that this wasn't just a new phase in his life. It was a new beginning, a chance to redefine his priorities and build something truly meaningful. And he was determined not to waste this opportunity. The months turned into a year, and Michael Turner's life had become almost unrecognizable compared to what it was before. The busy routine of corporate meetings and business dinners now shared space with afternoons in the park, nights helping, with homework, and weekends filled with family activities. On a Saturday morning, Michael woke up early, eager for the day ahead. It was the triplets' 7th birthday, and for the first time, he would be present to celebrate. As he got ready, his phone rang. It was Ryan, his CFO. "Michael, sorry to bother you on the weekend, but we have a situation. The Chinese investors are pushing for an urgent meeting. They want to discuss expansion into the Asian market. It's an opportunity we can't miss." Michael felt his stomach sink. The meeting would mean traveling immediately and missing the boy's birthday. A year ago, he wouldn't have hesitated to prioritize business. But now, Ryan, I can't. It's my children's birthday. Michael, do you understand what's at stake here? We're talking millions. I understand perfectly, Michael interrupted. His voice firm. But I also understand that there are things more important than money. Reschedule the meeting for Monday. If they're really interested, they'll wait. Hanging up the phone, Michael took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of anxiety and pride. He was learning to balance his professional life with his responsibilities. As a father, even if it meant making difficult decisions. Arriving at Helen's house, Michael was greeted by a whirlwind of activity. Colorful balloons decorated the entrance, and the sound of children's laughter echoed through the apartment. "Dad!" shouted the triplets in unison, running to hug him. "Happy birthday, my champions," Michael responded, kneeling to hug all three at once. "Ready for the best day ever?" Helen appeared in the kitchen doorway, a tired but happy smile on her face. "Hi, Michael. Glad you made it. I need help with the final preparations." While helping to organize the food and drinks, Michael couldn't help but notice how exhausted Helen looked. "Is everything okay?" he asked discreetly. Helen hesitated for a moment before answering. "Just tired. The hospital has been crazy, and with the party preparations, sometimes it feels like there aren't enough hours in the day." Michael nodded, understanding. In recent months, he had witnessed firsthand the challenges Helen faced daily as a single mother and full-time doctor. The party was a success. Children ran through the apartment, games were played enthusiastically, and the cake, decorated with dinosaurs, books, and puzzles representing each of the triplets' interests, was received with animated applause. At the end of the afternoon, when the last guests had left and the boys were napping exhausted on the couch, Michael helped Helen clean up the mess. "Thanks for the help," Helen said, sitting down for a moment. "I don't know how I would have managed everything alone." Michael sat down beside her. "Helen, I've been thinking a lot. You shouldn't have to do everything alone. I want to be more present, not just in the fun moments, but in the daily routine too." Helen looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I'm thinking of moving closer, maybe even to this building if there's an apartment available. I want to be able to help with homework, take the boys to school, be present when you have night shifts." Helen was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Michael, that's a big change. Are you sure?" Michael nodded, his gaze determined. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This past year has shown me what really matters, and I don't want to miss any more moments." At that instant, Peter woke up, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Dad, you're still here?" Michael smiled, pulling his son into a hug. "I am, champion, and I'll be here more and more." As Peter snuggled between Michael and Helen on the couch, soon followed by Luke and Michael Jr., who were also waking up, Michael felt a wave of emotion so intense it almost left him breathless. "You know," he began, drawing everyone's attention, "a few years ago, I thought success was having the biggest company, the biggest salary. But now, I know that true success is this. Being here with you, living every moment." Helen squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The boys, sensing the emotion of the moment, moved closer, turning the moment into a group hug. "We love you, Dad," said Peter, his voice muffled against Michael's chest. "And we're the best team," added Luke. "The strongest family in the world," completed Michael Jr. There in the middle of the living room, surrounded by torn gift wrapping, cake leftovers, and 3 sleepy children, Michael and Helen sealed a new commitment. It wasn't a romantic restart, but the beginning of a partnership based on mutual respect, understanding, and above all, the shared love for their children. The path ahead would still be challenging. There would be adjustments, discussions, and difficult moments. But for the first time in a long time, both Michael and Helen felt they were on the right track. Together, as a family, they would face whatever the future held. Michael knew challenges would come. There would be difficult days, arguments, moments of doubt. But looking at the smiling faces of his wife and children, he was sure of one thing. Together they could overcome any obstacle. Because in the end, love, true, deep and lasting love, was the most powerful force of all. 5 years passed since that afternoon in the park. The Turner-Mitchell family grew not only in age, but in love, understanding, and strength. It was a Sunday morning, and the house was bustling. The triplets, now 13 years old, were running from one side to the other, preparing for a special event. Michael and Helen watched the organized chaos with smiles on their faces, their hands intertwined. "Dad, have you seen my tie?" Peter shouted from the bedroom. "It's hanging on your closet door, son," Michael replied, laughing at the teenagers' distraction. Luke emerged from the improvised library they had created for him, carrying a stack of books. "Mom, do you think I can take all of these?" Helen smiled, helping him select a few. "How about we take 2? You can always come back for more." Michael Jr., always the most organized of the three, was already ready, sitting patiently with his backpack on his lap. "Okay, everyone in the car in 5 minutes," announced Michael, his voice mixing authority and plea. Miraculously, they managed to leave the apartment only 10 minutes late. In the elevator, as Michael adjusted Peter's unruly hair, Helen couldn't help but smile. "What is it?" asked Michael, noticing her look. "Nothing," she answered softly. "Just thank you for being here." The drive to the venue was filled with the animated chatter of the boys about the science project they were developing. Michael, listening attentively, felt a wave of pride. His sons were brilliant, curious, and full of life. After dropping off the children, Michael and Helen shared a moment of silence in the car. "Wow," Michael sighed. "Is it like this every morning?" Helen laughed. "Welcome to full-time parenthood, Mr. Turner." As they drove to their respective workplaces, they talked about the challenges and joys of the past few weeks. Michael's constant presence had brought a new dynamic to the family. The boys were flourishing with the additional attention, and Helen felt the weight of sole responsibility diminishing. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There had been discussions about parenting methods, schedules, and priorities. Michael, accustomed to having total control in his professional life, sometimes got frustrated with the unpredictability of family life. "You know," Helen commented as they stopped at a traffic light, "I think we're doing well considering everything." Michael nodded, thoughtful. "We still have a lot to learn, but I'm happy, Helen. Happier than I've been in a long time." As they arrived at the hospital where Helen worked, Michael surprised them both by leaning in and giving her a soft kiss on the cheek. "Have a good day. See you tonight?" Helen, feeling a slight blush on her cheeks, smiled. "Yes, see you later." As Michael headed to his office, he reflected on how his life had changed. Board meetings and million-dollar negotiations were still part of his day-to-day, but now they shared space with homework, family dinners, and bedtime stories. That afternoon, during an important video conference, Michael noticed something different on his desk. Among the financial reports and contracts was a colorful drawing made by Luke. It was a representation of the family: Michael, Helen, and the triplets all holding hands with a big heart in the background. Smiling, Michael picked up the drawing, discreetly showing it to the camera. "Excuse me, gentlemen, but I think we need to wrap up for today. I have an important commitment with my family." Leaving the office early, Michael stopped by a toy store. He bought a science experiment kit for the boys and, on impulse, a small box of chocolates for Helen. When he got home, he was greeted with enthusiastic hugs and a flood of stories about the day at school. Helen, arriving shortly after, seemed surprised and touched by the small gesture of the chocolates. As they had dinner together, laughing at Peter's jokes and listening to Luke talk about the book he was reading, Michael felt a deep sense of belonging. This was his place. Here, amidst the chaos of spilled glasses, overlapping conversations, and knowing smiles exchanged with Helen, he had found something that no professional success could provide. Later, after putting the boys to bed, Michael and Helen sat on the balcony of her apartment, sharing a moment of tranquility. "Michael," Helen began, her voice soft in the quiet night, "do you regret it? Leaving your previous life behind?" Michael looked at her, his eyes reflecting the city lights. "Not for a second. You know, I spent years chasing what I thought was success, but now I know what really matters." Helen smiled, reaching out to hold his hand. It was a simple gesture, but loaded with meaning. It wasn't a hasty romantic reconciliation, but the beginning of something new, built on a foundation of mutual understanding and shared love for their children. As the night progressed, Michael and Helen remained there, talking about the future, about their fears and hopes. And although the path ahead was still uncertain, they both knew that together they could face any challenge that arose. 5 years later, the future was in motion. The sun was setting over New York, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. On top of one of the most imposing skyscrapers in the city, the Turner Mitchell family gathered for a special celebration. Michael, now with some grey hair at his temples that gave him a distinguished look, observed the city with a mixture of nostalgia and pride. Helen, by his side, held his hand, her radiant face reflecting the sunset light. "I can't believe they're already 18, Helen murmured, looking at the triplets, now young adults who were talking animatedly on the other side of the terrace. Michael smiled, pulling her closer. "Time flies, doesn't it? It seems like yesterday that I met them." The occasion was the boys' high school graduation, and the family had decided to celebrate in grand style with an intimate party on the terrace of Turner Corp. Peter, the family athlete, had become captain of the school's soccer team and received a scholarship to play in college. His dream of becoming a professional player was getting closer, but he also nurtured a desire to use sports as a tool for social transformation. Luke, the intellectual, had been accepted to Harvard to study literature and social sciences. His reading club for underprivileged children had expanded to several schools in the city, and he planned to continue this work even during college. Michael Jr., to everyone's surprise, had decided to follow in his mother's footsteps in medicine, but with a focus on hospital management and public health policies. His goal was to combine medical knowledge with the business skills inherited from his father to improve the American healthcare system. "Attention everyone," Michael called, raising his glass. The family gathered around him, including Mrs. Cecilia, now a doting grandmother, and some close friends like Beatrice. "Today," Michael began, his voice choked with emotion, "we're not just celebrating Peter, Luke, and Michael's graduation. We're celebrating a journey of love, redemption, and growth." He looked at each of his sons, his eyes shining with pride. "You three are living proof that love has the power to transform lives. You've overcome challenges, grown with grace, and become men your mother and I couldn't be more proud of." Helen stepped forward, joining Michael. "When we look at you," she said, her voice soft but firm, "we see not just our children, but the future. A bright future, full of possibilities and compassion." The triplets, normally so different in their personalities, shared a look of complicity before approaching for a group hug with their parents. "Thank you," Peter murmured, his voice muffled by emotion, "for never giving up on us, for teaching us the value of perseverance, for showing us that it's possible to start over," added Luke, "and that love can overcome any obstacle." Michael Jr., always the most reflective, concluded, "and for teaching us that true success lies in making a difference in others' lives." As the night progressed, with laughter, stories, and plans for the future being shared, Michael and Helen found a moment of quietude. "You know," Michael said softly, watching his children interact with the guests, "sometimes I wonder what our life would be like if I hadn't made so many mistakes in the past." Helen smiled, caressing her husband's face. "Every choice, every mistake, every success brought us here. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing." Michael nodded, pulling her in for a gentle kiss. "You're right. Everything brought us to this perfect moment." And there, under the stars of New York, with the buzz of the party in the background and the love of a lifetime enveloping them, Michael and Helen silently renewed their promise to each other. A promise of love, partnership, and continuing, to build a legacy that would transcend generations. The Turner Mitchell family had faced storms, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger. And now, with the triplets about to take flight on their own journeys, a new phase was beginning. A phase full of promises, challenges, and above all, love. Because in the end, they understood that life isn't about avoiding mistakes or seeking perfection. It's about learning, growing, and loving unconditionally. And in this mathematics of the heart, they had, without a doubt, found the formula for true success. 10 years later, Legacies and New Beginnings. The morning sun illuminated the conference room at the top of the Turner Court building. Michael, now 55, with grey hair at his temples and expression lines that told stories of laughter and challenges, stood in front of a large window, observing the city that never slept. Helen entered the room, bringing with her an invigorating energy. At 53, she had become one of the most respected doctors in the country, balancing her career with her work at the family foundation. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, approaching Michael and adjusting his tie. Michael smiled, that same smile that still made Helen's heart skip a beat. "More than ready. It's time to pass the baton." Today was the day Michael would officially step down from the presidency of Turner Corp, making way for a new generation of leadership. But it wasn't just a day of goodbyes. It was a day of new beginnings. One by one, the board members arrived, including familiar faces and new talents. Among them, to Michael and Helen's pride, were their sons. Peter, now 28, had become a renowned soccer player, but his true passion lay in the social work he carried out through the sports foundation he had created. Luke, recently returned from a PhD in comparative literature, divided his time between teaching at the university and expanding reading incentive programs in underprivileged communities. And Michael Jr., graduated in medicine and with an MBA in hospital management, had become an innovative force in the healthcare sector, combining medical expertise with business vision. When everyone was seated, Michael took the floor. 28 years ago, I was a different man. Focused only on financial success, I had lost sight of what really mattered. But fate, or perhaps love, gave me a second chance. He looked at Helen, his eyes shining with love and gratitude. "Thanks to this incredible woman and our wonderful children, I learned that true success isn't measured by numbers in a bank account, but by the positive impact we have on the world." Michael paused, looking at each face in the room. Turner Corp isn't just a company, it's a legacy of innovation, social responsibility, and family values. And today, it's with immense pride that I announce the next phase of that legacy. He gestured towards his sons. Peter will continue expanding our sports foundation, bringing opportunities to young people across the country. Luke will lead our education and culture division because we believe that knowledge is the key to a better future. And Michael Jr. will take over as president of the company, bringing a fresh and innovative vision to our business with a special focus on health and technology. The room erupted in applause. The triplets, now grown men, exchanged looks of determination and complicity. Helen, with tears in her eyes, stood up to join her husband. "When I look at this room," Helen, with tears in her eyes, stood up to join her husband. "When I look at this room," she said, her voice laden with emotion, "I see more than a successful company. I see a family that has grown, overcome challenges, and is committed to making a difference in the world." Michael Jr. took the floor next. "Dad, Mom, brothers, what we've built here goes beyond business. It's a testament to the power of love, redemption, and perseverance. I promise to honor this legacy and carry it forward, not just as CEO, but as part of this incredible family." As the meeting progressed, discussing future plans and new initiatives, Michael and Helen exchanged a knowing look. Silently, they left the room, allowing the new generation to take the reins. On the building's terrace, with the city of New York stretching as far as the eye could see, the couple embraced. "We did it, didn't we?" Helen whispered, resting her head on Michael's shoulder. "Yes, my love," Michael replied, softly kissing her forehead. "And this is just the beginning." As they watched the horizon full of possibilities, Michael and Helen reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A journey of mistakes and successes, of separations and reunions, of challenges and triumphs, but above all, a journey of love. They knew the future would bring new challenges, perhaps grandchildren, new causes to embrace, new dreams to fulfill. But they were ready. Because they had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that love, when nurtured and valued, has the power to transform not just lives, but entire generations. 10 years later, legacies and new beginnings. The morning sun illuminated the conference room at the top of the Turner Court building. Michael, now 55 years old, grey hair at his temples and expression lines that told stories of laughter and challenges, was standing in front of a large window, observing the city that never slept. Helen entered the room, bringing with her an invigorating energy. At 53, she had become one of the most respected doctors in the country, balancing her career with her work at the Family Foundation. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, approaching Michael and adjusting his tie. Michael smiled, that same smile that still made Helen's heart skip a beat. "More than ready. It's time to pass the baton." Today was the day Michael would officially step down from the presidency of Turner Corp, making way for a new generation of leadership. But it wasn't just a day of goodbyes. It was a day of new beginnings. One by one, the board members arrived, including familiar faces and new talent. Among them, to Michael and Helen's pride, were their sons. Peter, now 28, had become a renowned soccer player, but his true passion lay in the social work he carried out through the sports foundation he had created. Luke, recently returned from a PhD in comparative literature, divided his time between teaching at the university and expanding reading incentive programs in underprivileged communities. And Michael Jr., graduated in medicine and with an MBA in hospital management, had become an innovative force in the healthcare sector, combining medical expertise with business vision. When everyone was seated, Michael took the floor. 28 years ago, I was a different man, focused only on financial success. I had lost sight of what really mattered. But fate, or perhaps love, gave me a second chance. He looked at Helen, his eyes shining with love and gratitude. "Thanks to this incredible woman and our wonderful children, I learned that true success is not measured by numbers in a bank account, but by the positive impact we cause in the world." Michael paused, looking at each face in the room. Turner Corp is not just a company, it's a legacy. A legacy of innovation, social responsibility, and family values. And today, it is with immense pride that I announce the next phase of this legacy. He gestured towards his sons. Peter will continue expanding our sports foundation, bringing opportunities to young people across the country. Luke will lead our education and culture division, because we believe that knowledge is the key to a better future. And Michael Jr. will take over the presidency of the company, bringing a fresh and innovative vision to our business, with a special focus on health and technology. The room erupted in applause. The triplets, now grown men, exchanged looks of determination and complicity. Helen, with tears in her eyes, stood up to join her husband. "When I look at this room," she said, her voice laden with emotion, "I see more than a successful company. I see a family that has grown, overcome challenges, and is committed to making a difference in the world." Michael Jr. took the floor next. "Dad, Mom, brothers, what we've built here goes beyond business. It's a testament to the power of love, redemption, and perseverance. I promise to honor this legacy and carry it forward, not just as CEO, but as part of this incredible family." As the meeting progressed, discussing future plans and new initiatives, Michael and Helen exchanged a knowing look. Silently, they left the room, allowing the new generation to take the reins. On the building's terrace, with the city of New York stretching as far as the eye could see, the couple embraced. "We did it, didn't we?" Helen whispered, resting her head on Michael's shoulder. "Yes, my love," Michael replied, softly kissing her forehead, "and this is just the beginning." As they watched the horizon, full of possibilities, Michael and Helen reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A journey of mistakes and successes, of separations and reunions, of challenges and triumphs, but above all, a journey of love. They knew the future would bring new challenges, perhaps grandchildren, new causes to embrace, new dreams to fulfill, but they were ready, because they had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that love, when nurtured and valued, has the power to transform not just lives but entire generations. As the day progressed, Michael and Helen found themselves surrounded by their family and closest friends, celebrating not just the transition of the company but the journey that had brought them all to this point. Peter approached his parents, a proud smile on his face. "You know, Dad, I always wondered why you pushed yourself so hard in the early days. Now I understand. It wasn't just about success. It was about creating something meaningful. Michael nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. And now it's your turn to take that meaning and expand it. Your work with the Sports Foundation is changing lives, Peter. Never forget that. Luke joined them, a book tucked under his arm as always. I've been thinking, he said, his eyes alight with enthusiasm, about expanding our literacy programs. Internationally, there are so many communities that could benefit. Helen beamed with pride. That's a wonderful idea, Luke. Your father and I will support you every step of the way. Michael Jr., looking every bit the new CEO in his sharp suit, was the last to join the family huddle. I can't thank you both enough, he said, his voice thick with emotion, for the trust you've placed in me, for the lessons you've taught us, all. Michael Sr. pulled his youngest into a tight embrace. You've earned this, son. Your vision for the company, your dedication to both business and healthcare. You're going to take Turner Corp to heights I never even dreamed of. As the family stood together, overlooking the city that had been the backdrop to their story, they were joined by Beatrice, Helen's lifelong friend. Well, well, Beatrice said, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Who would have thought that crashed? Wedding would lead to all this? They all laughed, the memory now a source of amusement rather than pain. Life has a funny way of working out, Helen mused, leaning into Michael's embrace. As the sun began to set, painting the New York skyline in hues of gold and pink, the Turner family gathered for a photo. Michael and Helen in the center, flanked by their 3 sons, all wearing matching smiles of joy and hope. Just as the photographer was about to take the shot, Michael spoke up. "Wait," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I just want to say something." Everyone paused, turning their attention to the family patriarch. 28 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I had success, wealth, and what I thought was a perfect life planned out. But standing here now with all of you, I realize that true perfection isn't about flawless plans or uninterrupted success. It's about the beauty found in second chances, in forgiveness, and in the love that binds us all together. He looked at each of his sons in turn. Peter, Luke, Michael. You 3 were the surprise that changed everything. You taught me that love isn't about biology or timing, it's about choice. Every day I choose to be your father, and it's the best decision I make each morning. Turning to Helen, he continued, his voice softening. And Helen, my love, my partner, my heart. You gave me the greatest gift of all, a family. Your strength, your forgiveness, your unwavering love. You are the cornerstone of everything we've built. There wasn't a dry eye on the terrace as Michael finished speaking. Helen, overcome with emotion, pulled him in for a kiss, while their sons applauded. As they finally posed for the photo, the setting sun casting a warm glow over them all, there was a palpable sense of not just an ending, but a new beginning. The Turner legacy, built on love, redemption, and the power of second chances, was entering a new chapter. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Michael found himself alone on the terrace once more. He looked out over the city, remembering the young, ambitious man he once was, so focused on climbing to the top that he nearly missed out on life's greatest treasures. Helen joined him, slipping her hand into his. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked softly. Michael turned to her, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I was just thinking about how differently things could have turned out. If you hadn't come to the wedding that day, if I hadn't seen the boys." Helen nodded, understanding. Life is full of pivotal moments. We're lucky we recognized ours. "More than lucky," Michael agreed. "Blessed." As they stood there, hand in hand, the future stretched out before them. A future filled with the laughter of grandchildren yet to come, new challenges to face, and an ever-growing family bound by love and shared purpose. Michael Turner, once defined by his business, acumen and relentless ambition, now knew that his true legacy wasn't the company that bore his name or the fortune he'd amassed. His legacy was in the lives he'd touched, the family he'd built, and the love he'd nurtured against all odds. As the lights of New York twinkled below them, Michael and Helen Turner looked forward to the next chapter of their lives, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, just as they had for the past 28 years. The story of the Turner family, a tale of lost love found, of unexpected blessings, and of the transformative power of forgiveness and second chances, would be told for generations to come. It stood as a testament to the idea that it's never too late to rewrite your story, to choose love and to build a legacy that truly matters. And as Michael and Helen shared one last kiss under the starlit sky, they knew that their greatest adventure was still unfolding, one day at a time, with each choice to love, to forgive, and to cherish the precious gift of family.